I think I hear
Oh,
you now.
welcome to the chat show. Welcome everyone. With the chat show where we talk about empathy, employment, and innovation every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And in today's show, we have Becky Kekula, who has been a great champion for people with disability, providing services and working as a director of a director of disability equity index. She's an advocate for the disability and inclusion on a global scale, and providing really a great work at Disability In. She is also uh, the DEI is a joint initiatives between the American Association of People with Disabilities and Disability In. She's also currently serving as Little People of America (LPA) employment chair, and she is on the board of advisors for the National Center for Disability Journalism at Arizona State. DEI is a joint initiative between the American Association of People with Disability and Disability In, which is the most comprehensive benchmarking tool for disability and inclusion. So, with that, Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. Excited to be here.
And I know whenever we talk, I've been getting some great inspirational story and about your why, that why you do what you do. Would love to learn and understand more about your why.
That's a great question. So for those of you who can't see, because I'm not in front of a large audience, I have dwarfism, and I stand 4 feet tall as an adult. And there are only 30,000 other people in the US with dwarfism. So there is not much representation when it comes to dwarfism, but proudly, I identify as part of the disability community, and I'm passionate about advocating for advancements for all people with disabilities so we can lead to more equality in all aspects of life. And growing up, it was not always easy for me. I grew up in an average height household, so 80% of little people are born to average height parents. My parents pushed me as hard as they could, and I was able to find my independence by going to college. And when I got out of college, even though I had several internship experiences, I struggled to find my first permanent job opportunity. I sent out 1,000 resumes and went on 100 interviews. And every time I walked in the room in those 100 interviews, I was judged based on my appearance. There were no questions as to why are you like that, or how do you really think you can do the job. I didn't get the constructive feedback that I needed, so I assumed that they just didn't want me to do the job because they didn't think I could handle it. And I want to prevent that to happen for other people in the future. We need to continue to do this work so people don't have to face that many rejections.
So, Becky, you just touched very important word, that yet constructive feedback, and that is a very common challenge we face when we are working with employers and when we are working with hiring managers, and that's where we really try to put extra weightage on that, and focus on that, so that we can really help individuals with disability find a meaningful job. So with that, you are doing just amazing work at Disability In, working with Disability Equality Index. So what's happening? What is new? And during this pandemic and all crisis, what are the new things and new findings you are finding and working on with your program?
Well, you hit on a great point, kind of emphasizing the constructive feedback piece. There's some feedback I received in one of my more recent jobs, and the way that it was delivered to me was, in the future, try doing it this way. I think one of the biggest struggles with constructive feedback is people just don't know how to deliver the information without feeling like they're offending someone. And I think that also applies to disability etiquette. People are afraid to interact with the disability community because they're afraid of the terminology to use. And that kind of leads into the work with the Disability Equality Index, because we call it a carrot, not a stick. So if companies are saying no to answers, it's okay. It at least gets you thinking about those answers and finding ways to improve in the future. And we're not going to shame you for getting started on the journey. It's those companies that are afraid to take that first step that we really want to encourage to join us on this journey. And the index, the questions are in the public sphere 365 days a year. And companies who have 500 employees or more are the ones who are eligible to officially participate, but it doesn't prevent anyone in the world from taking a look at the questions and applying them to their organization or social environments right away. And a lot of it is just intentionally including disability every part of the conversation, whether it's diversity and inclusion statements, whether it's asking for accommodations. Put it out there that you're willing to make an accommodation if someone asks for it. Making sure your websites are accessible. Don't just think about attracting your external customers. Think about making sure that employees who may need access to accessible content can have that access internally. So think about these things all at the same time, but also identify those low-hanging fruit, things that may be a little bit easier to accomplish within the next year versus those that may be a longer-term goal.
No, that's a great. That's really great. One thing which when we talked last time, which was a great learning for me, I would love to have our viewers learn from you. Is as this remote worker and those things are coming into the play at workplace, how are those questions and that framework you are tweaking in order to accommodate the current needs and the future needs, as we always say, world of work is changing. So how are you accommodating that in your framework?
Absolutely. So if you take a look at the questions for the 2021 index that are now publicly available, we made some updates to 4 of the categories. And one of them includes additional benefits that we're asking companies to consider that could be helpful to the disability community. And then another one is related to remote work opportunities. Are people able to have the option to continue to work remotely? But we've also had the conversation of, we want people to have the option, but we don't want to prevent people from having the option of going back to the office physically once it's safe to do so, because we don't want to lose track of making sure that physical spaces remain accessible or get worked on to become more accessible.
Yeah. So and sometimes when you go through this some of these questions, that's how really I learned that when you go through these questions, it just makes you think. And in some cases, if the organizations are not doing this, this is an opportunity for organization and thought leaders to learn and understand how your framework can help them adopt some of the best practices, because this is very common question people they ask us, that what are the best practices. So this is something I would highly recommend this questionnaire to go through and learn from that by answering some of the questions, because that just gives an amazing framework and best practices. So thank you for doing that.
And then with the Disability In website, we're constantly publishing public-facing resources that are based off of information that we collect from the DEI, because each category has a best practices section, which allows companies to share what they're doing outside of the box of what's asked in the questions. So we always want to hear from companies. And even if companies aren't engaged, we want to hear great practices, because not one company can do it alone to reduce that unemployment rate of people with disabilities.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for doing such amazing work at Disability In. Just changing the gears a little bit, as we all know, last Sunday we celebrated 30th anniversary of ADA, and bringing change and access and inclusion, progressive inclusion at workplace. So how do you see the future for people with disability and your work? How it is really going to impact the workplace?
I think we need to celebrate for a little bit the progress we've made, because the act definitely has prevented things, even in those interviews that I went through. Like, no one was going to say something if that was really the reason they didn't want me to work there. But there are just different things that have allowed for more access for people with disabilities. So thankful for the piece of legislation. But I think we need to think beyond of how can we do even better in the next 30 years and beyond to make sure that people with disabilities have access to all aspects of society. And we don't want people to continue to talk about us and try to solve it without us. We need to be part of the equation and be the problem solvers. So take, for example, when companies are looking to make their websites more accessible when it comes to internal facing sites, hire people who are using screen readers and able to be the solution. And I think we need to continue to share stories. We need more executives to share their story, relationship with disability, because it affects how companies act and how they prioritize the importance of disability inclusion. And it's the one category that anyone can fit into at any point in their life. So the numbers keep growing.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So, talking about the stories, share with us any recent story or any story where you see, as you know, our theme of this show is talk about empathy, employment, and innovation. So, anything connected to this, where you have seen some amazing story or incidents related to our theme.
Recently at the Disability in Virtual Conference, some of the most powerful content was showing relationships between our Next Gen Leader Mentorship Program, people who are STEM, finance, or business majors in college or recent graduates, and our employee partners who are there willing to share their story and mentor these students and offer them the constructive feedback they need to grow. And another piece just from the conference was someone's feedback on Twitter when they said there's something that happens when a panelist shares their relationship to disability. Most likely it may be an invisible disability because we didn't know that they had a connection previous to when they announce it. And you just start to feel like, oh, they get it. I can trust them a little bit more now because they're willing to talk about their disability. I'm willing to talk about mine. Let's build on this. And I think it's that those moments when you wonder what sparked someone's interest, what's someone's why when they start working in this space. And then it just clicks and it becomes so much more organic and powerful. And that's why we encourage people to continue to share their stories, relationships to disability, because you never know who it's going to impact. People want to see people like them coming forward and sharing their story.
As you mentioned, right, that comfort is so important, and that comfort comes from that trust. And when you share your story, that's what really makes people comfortable. And I call this it's an empathetic approach, right? So when you talk to someone in an empathetic way, that's what you are creating. You are creating that inclusive culture. You are giving that comfort. So that's one of the things which I really love about your mentorship program. Last year when I participated, this year also participated, but last year I had a great success story. Someone whom I mentored, we established a goal for 3 months, and at the end of the third month, he was able to get really meaningful job at General Motors. So that was that's a great feelings, and that's little bit of efforts. It's not a lot of efforts. And when you make the other person comfortable, help them build that confidence. That's a beautiful thing. Any, we have few, maybe one more minute, 30 seconds left. If you can share your last thought, what would you like to convey to our audience from today's segment?
Absolutely. Another piece just on the empathy was when I started doing public speaking, I signed up for Toastmasters, which is a way for you to improve your public speaking skills. And sometimes someone who is just trying to socialize in everyday life signs up, and sometimes a future professional speaker may sign up. And there was this one lady in the session, and she was afraid to even talk to the person next to her when she came into the first meeting. And then watching over the course of time, her building up confidence and being able to give a presentation in front of the whole group was powerful. So I think the biggest piece is don't think that you can't do something, know that you have the support if you just ask for help, and try to learn from others. Ask questions of people with disabilities rather than assuming they can't accomplish things, because a lot more people have amazing stories to share. And there are so many ways that we can connect on deeper levels if we share our human stories first. Even like in interviews, if in those interviews they asked me, "How are you doing today?" and we had a little dialogue for 5-10 minutes and then dived into the questions, like it would have been a much different dynamic.
You really need to attend the public speaking course. I don't think so. But thank you for sharing that. That's you are an amazing speaker. I have attended few of your keynote events and in the conferences. So you are amazing individual and amazing thought leader. So thank you for all the work you do for people with disability and partnering with partners like us and helping us build innovative solutions and helping us to learn from what you do and how you think and how you build those best practices for organizations, because that's what we do. We learn from you and disability in another organization, and then we work with employers to implement those best practices. So thank you for doing that.
And we
And
value our partnership with you very much. So thank you for that too.
yes, and we appreciate as a disability-owned DOBE business all the mentorship and some great work you do to help the organization like Rangam to grow and sustain and grow.
And that's another piece. Don't be afraid to start your own thing if you're facing rejections when it comes to the traditional career path that you may have originally imagined. Go out there, create your own business, get certified by Disability In, and you'll go far.
So thank you again for really promoting entrepreneurship. Again, this is another work you what you do. So again, thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for joining. Thank you Zole for doing a wonderful job and interpreting our show and our conversation. We will see you next week, same time, same place, 2 o'clock EST, and talk more about empathy, employment, and innovation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.